You thought the blast was the worst part. You thought surviving the flash meant you won. But day 5 is when the math catches up to the fiction. The sky is clear, but the silence is heavy. There are no sirens. There are no FEMA trucks rolling down Main Street. The reality of a grid-down nuclear escalation in a mid-sized American town is that nobody is coming to punch your ticket. It is 96 hours past 0 hour. The radiation outside your taped-up windows has decayed to 3 Röntgens per hour. That means you can finally step outside without melting, but every minute downrange costs you pieces of your cellular structure. You step out onto the porch. The air smells like copper and burnt plastic. Your neighbour's house is intact, but the front door is wide open. The illusion of civilization burned away 72 hours ago. It is not about hoarding beans in a bunker. It is about staring at your 6-year-old daughter and realising you have to go out into that toxic dust because her lips are cracking and you have no clean water left to give her. Guilt is the only engine you have left. You crack the seal on your front door. The duct tape tears with a sound that seems deafening in the dead quiet of the neighbourhood. The sky has a strange, bruised tint to it. You step onto the concrete, feeling the crunch of fallout particles under your boots. It looks like dirty snow piling up against the gutters and the tyres of dead vehicles. 2 houses down, you see Miller. He is carrying a hunting rifle, looking wildly at the sky, his face smeared with sweat and dirt. He is dragging a rolling cooler behind him, the plastic wheels grinding loudly against the pavement. He screams that he is heading to the reservoir. You know the reservoir is downwind of the primary strike zone. You try to warn him, but he just waves you off, panicked and desperate. He is acting like the protagonist of a movie he watched once, thinking motion equals survival. But out here, motion without intelligence is an expedited death sentence. The problem with day 5 is that the initial adrenaline crash hits everyone at the exact same time. For 4 days, people sat in the dark, clutching baseball bats, waiting for the government broadcast to tell them what to do. Now, the batteries in their emergency radios are dead, and the denial has broken. You watch a family across the street load their minivan with trash bags full of clothes. The father keeps turning the ignition. Click, click, click. The EMP wiped the ECU, but his brain refuses to accept it. He punches the steering wheel, sobbing, while his kids sit in the back seat, breathing in unfiltered air. This is the failed reaction. They treat the disaster like a hurricane, assuming they can just drive one state over and book a motel. They do not understand that the grid is down everywhere. There is no edge to this map. They are burning daylight and exposing their children to ambient radiation because they cannot pivot their mindset. Most people think they have 2 weeks of food. The math says they have 4 days. Stop guessing. Go to protocolsurvival.com and get your real survival score. The calculator is free to try. You need hard math out here. The EPA Emergency Worker Guidelines dictate a maximum of 25 rem for life-saving activities. Right now, the ambient radiation is hovering between 3 and 5 Röntgens per hour in moderate fallout zones. That means you have exactly 5 hours of total lifetime outdoor exposure before you cross the threshold into acute radiation sickness territory. You might think the National Guard CBRN units are going to roll through in hazmat suits to handle the hot zones. They are not. Military assets are securing strategic infrastructure and federal continuity sites, not your suburban cul-de-sac. The math of deployment logistics in a national nuclear scenario means mid-sized towns are designated as self-recovery zones. You are your own hazard team. You have to track your own dose, or you will not be around to protect your family. The complication of this specific radioactive environment is that the threat is invisible and decaying, which creates a false sense of security. On day 1, the fear kept you inside. On day 5, the sky looks normal. The birds are even starting to come back. Your brain tells you the danger has passed. But the fallout is settling into the water table. It is coating the leaves of the oak trees. The wind kicks up, and suddenly a safe 3 Röntgen zone spikes to 10 because a dust devil just dragged a concentrated hotspot across your front lawn. If you do not have a functional dosimeter, you are flying blind in a minefield. You have to treat the dust like it is made of broken glass. Every time you step outside to scavenge, you have to establish a strict decontamination SOP at your front door. If you track that dust into the room where your kids are sleeping, you are the vector of their sickness. That is the burden. You make it to the commercial strip 2 miles from your house. The sun is baking the asphalt, and the smell of rotting meat hits you a block away. The local grocery store is a carcass. The automatic glass doors are shattered, leaving jagged teeth in the frames. Shopping carts are flipped over in the parking lot, some with discarded items spilling out into the radioactive dust. You step inside, your boots crunching on broken glass and spilled cereal. The shelves are stripped bare in the centre aisles. The bread aisle is empty. The bottled water is gone. You see a man in a torn polo shirt prying up the floor grates near the deli, looking for dropped cans. In the back, near the loading dock, 2 men are arguing violently over a dented tin of industrial peaches. One has a tire iron, the other has a kitchen knife. They are not fighting over peaches, they are fighting over the realization that nobody is coming. The masses react to the empty shelves with a paralyzing confusion. You see people standing in the empty aisles, staring blankly at the spaces where the soup used to be. A woman is clutching a fistful of useless cash, asking anyone who walks by if they will sell her a bottle of water for a $100 bill. She is trying to apply the old rules to the new world. This is the danger of normalcy bias. They think currency still holds power. They think that because the store structure is still standing, the supply chain is just delayed. They sit in the parking lot, waiting for the FEMA delivery trucks to roll up with pallets of MREs. They group together, forming a helpless herd, making themselves prime targets for the opportunistic predators. They waste precious hours sitting on the curb, inhaling the ambient radiation, trading rumours about relief columns that do not exist, instead of adapting to what remains. Let us look at the logistics of the supply chain. Under normal conditions, grocery stores operate on a just-in-time inventory system. They restock daily. When the EMP and the escalation hit, the trucks stopped. Without deliveries, a typical supermarket is stripped clean in exactly 72 hours. We are at hour 120. The math is brutal and absolute. You might argue that the state governor would dispatch the National Guard to secure food distribution centres and ration it out. Here is why that fails. The Guard's vehicles are largely EMP hardened, yes, but the fuel depots they rely on are pumped by commercial grid power. They cannot access the diesel. Furthermore, 40% of the Guard's personnel are at home dealing with their own families in the fallout zones. The chain of command is fractured. There is no central distribution. The price system has ceased to function. We are now in a barter economy. If you are banking on state intervention, you are banking on a ghost. The specific complication of scavenging on day 5 is the radiological contamination of the food supply itself. Even if you find a pallet of canned goods that the looters missed in the back room, those cans have been sitting in a building with shattered windows while fallout drifted in. The dust has settled on the aluminium. The masses just grab the cans and pop them open, cross-contaminating the food with the dust on the lid. They ingest the alpha emitters directly into their digestive tract, guaranteeing severe internal radiation poisoning. To survive this, you have to treat every scavenged item like a biohazard. You must carefully wipe down the exterior of every can, every plastic wrapper, before you even think about breaching the seal. And you have to do it with limited water. You are risking your 25 rem lifetime limit just to secure calories. And if you fail to clean the prize properly, you are feeding poison to your family. Back in the neighbourhood, the social fabric is tearing. You walk up to the cul-de-sac and see that the Homeowners Association president, a man named Davis, has parked his dead SUV sideways across the street. He has 3 neighbours with him, all armed with shotguns, wearing mismatched tactical gear they bought online. They have set up a crude checkpoint. Davis is holding a clipboard, demanding to know what you found at the store. He calls it a community resource pool. It is not a pool, it is a shakedown. The man who used to send you nasty letters about your grass length is now trying to establish himself as a warlord in cargo shorts. He demands a tax on the cans of beans you just risked your life to secure. Behind him, you see families peering out of their living room windows, terrified. They have traded the fear of the bomb for the fear of the guy next door. The failed reaction of the neighbourhood is immediate submission or blind panic. Most of the residents just hand over their scavenged goods to Davis, hoping that compliance will buy them security. They fall into the trap of outsourcing their protection to anyone who speaks with a loud voice and holds a weapon. Others hoard their supplies in secret, burying them in the backyard in the dead of night, trusting absolutely no one. Paranoia becomes a contagion. Neighbours who used to host barbecues together are now spying on each other through the blinds, noting who looks well fed and who is coughing. The community loses its collective strength because the lack of a pre-established authority structure leaves a vacuum. And in a grid-down scenario, vacuums are filled by the most ruthless. The people who hoard isolate themselves, becoming easy targets for a coordinated raid. The people who submit lose their autonomy and eventually starve when the micro-dictator gets hungry. The logistics of post-collapse governance dictate that you need a localized leadership structure based on mutual aid, not extortion. You need a trusted network. But you might say, the local police would never let a guy like Davis take over a suburban street. They would arrest him. Here is the Steelman reality. The local police department has lost its comms. The 911 dispatch is dead. Half the force abandoned their posts to protect their own families when the mushroom clouds went up on the news. The remaining officers are huddled at the precinct, guarding the armory and waiting for state orders that are never coming. They are not patrolling your subdivision. You are entirely on your own. You have to navigate this political crisis locally. You cannot just shoot Davis, or you invite a blood feud that will consume the neighbourhood. You have to build a coalition of the willing. You rely on force multiplication through alliances, not blind submission. The specific complication here is the brutal arithmetic of feeding a defence force versus feeding your dependents. If you form an alliance with 3 other able-bodied men to counter the HOA Warlord, those men are burning heavy calories. They are standing watch, patrolling the perimeter, digging latrines. They need 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day just to maintain combat effectiveness. But the food you have is finite. Every scoop of peanut butter you give to the guy watching your back is a scoop you cannot give to your child. You have to look your daughter in the eyes, see her ribs starting to show, and explain why the man with the rifle gets the last piece of bread. That is the true horror of Day 5. You are bartering your child's nutrition for her physical safety. If you starve the guards, the warlord breaks in and takes everything. If you feed the guards, your kids suffer. There are no good choices. You need to expand your scavenging radius. The local stores are empty, and the neighbourhood is becoming a powder keg. You need a vehicle. You walk down to the interstate overpass and look at the graveyard of the modern age. It is a sea of dead metal. Thousands of cars, trucks and semi-trailers are stalled in a massive chaotic gridlock. Some crashed into the barriers when their electronic steering failed. Others just rolled to a stop, their drivers abandoning them with the doors wide open. The smell of leaking antifreeze and burnt rubber is thick in the air. You weave through the metal carcasses, looking at the dashboards. Dead screens, fried circuits. You see a late-model electric vehicle that caught fire, the battery bank completely melted down. A few scavengers are out here, trying to siphon gas using garden hoses, choking and spitting out the foul-tasting fuel. It is a monument to our over-reliance on silicon. The reaction of the stranded drivers on day 1 was absolute denial, and you still see the remnants of it on day 5. People left notes on their windshields saying they would be back with a tow truck. They locked their doors, thinking the insurance company would handle it. Even now, you see a guy in a suit sitting inside a dead luxury sedan, frantically pushing the push-to-start button, crying as the dead dashboard mocks him. He refuses to accept that his $80,000 status symbol is now just a fiberglass coffin. People treat the EMP like a temporary glitch. They do not understand that the electromagnetic pulse induced thousands of volts through the microprocessors, physically melting the delicate pathways on the silicon chips. You cannot reboot a melted chip. They waste hours searching for jumper cables instead of lacing up their boots and walking. They are trapped in the psychology of the old world. The EMP Commission studies provide the hard math on this. Modern vehicles are rolling computers. Pre-1980 vehicles, with carburetted engines and minimal solid-state electronics, have an 80 to 95% chance of surviving an EMP. Vehicles from 1980 to 2000 drop to a 50% chance. Anything post-2000, heavily reliant on complex sensor arrays, has a 25% chance or less. Electric vehicles are a total loss. Now, you might argue that your newer truck is shielded because the metal body acts as a Faraday cage. This is a fatal misunderstanding of physics. The windows, the rubber tyres, and the gaps in the chassis allow the high-frequency pulse to penetrate easily. The wiring harness inside your car acts as a giant antenna, pulling the destructive energy straight into the ECU. Unless your vehicle was parked inside a grounded, windowless, corrugated metal barn at the exact moment of detonation, its electronics are toast. You need to stop looking at modern trucks and start hunting for rust. The threat-specific complication of finding a working vehicle in a post-EMP radioactive environment is the noise. Let us say you actually find a vintage Ford truck. You hotwire it. The heavy block engine roars to life. In the old world, that sound meant freedom. Today, it is a dinner bell. The ambient noise level of the world has dropped to near zero. No planes, no hum of the power grid, no highway traffic. The sound of a V8 engine echoing off the silent suburban houses can be heard for miles. Every scavenger, every warlord, and every desperate father within a 3-mile radius suddenly knows exactly where you are and what you have. A working vehicle is the ultimate force multiplier. It means you can haul heavy water, evacuate a hot zone, or ram through a blockade. By starting that engine, you have painted a massive target on your back. You are trading mobility for stealth. You remember Old Man Henderson, 2 streets over? He had a 1974 Chevy pickup sitting in his detached metal garage. He passed away a year ago, and the house has been empty. You sneak through the backyards, avoiding the HOA checkpoints. You pry open the side door of the garage. The air is thick with dust and the smell of old motor oil. The truck is covered in a tarp. You pull it back, revealing the faded blue paint. It is a beautiful, ugly piece of mechanical simplicity. You pop the hood. No fuel injection, no computerized sensors, just a carburetor, a distributor, and an alternator. It is exactly what the EMP Commission said would survive. You check the battery. It is dead from sitting, but the internal plates might still be intact. If you can swap the battery from one of the dead modern cars outside and prime the carb, this relic might actually turn over. When the grid goes down, your cloud notes are gone. You cannot pull up a video tutorial on how to hotwire a 1974 Chevy ignition switch, or how to bypass a neutral safety switch. Your browser is dead. You need a system that works offline. I built Protocol Survival to be that system. Secure your data now. You need schematics, you need checklists, and you need them stored locally on an EMP-shielded device. Out here in the garage, staring at a nest of old wires, ignorance is not an excuse. You pull out your shielded tablet, boot up the Protocol app, and pull the exact wiring diagram for a vintage GM steering column. You identify the primary ignition wire and the starter wire. You strip the ends with your knife. The app gives you the step-by-step process to bypass the mechanical lock. You do not have time to guess which wire is which while scavengers are roaming the streets. The logistics of getting the Chevy running involve more than just a battery. It requires clean fuel. Gasoline degrades. Ethanol-blended fuels break down and attract moisture after just 3 to 6 months. You might say there are millions of gallons of gas sitting in the underground tanks at the local gas station. Yes, there are, but you cannot get to them. The electric submersible pumps require heavy 3-phase grid power to push the fuel to the surface. Without a massive generator and the technical knowledge to hotwire a commercial pump relay, that underground fuel is a mirage. You have to siphon fuel from the tanks of the dead cars on the interstate. You have to carry a rubber hose, snake it past the anti-siphon baffles of modern gas necks, and manually extract it. You are hauling jerry cans through a radioactive environment, exposing yourself to the ambient dose just to get 5 gallons of volatile liquid. The specific complication of siphoning fuel in a fallout zone is vapor inhalation combined with radioactive particulate. When you suck on that hose to start the siphon, you are pulling toxic fumes into your lungs. But worse, the dust that has settled on the vehicles is disturbed. You are operating in a highly contaminated microenvironment. If you spill the gasoline on your clothes, it acts as a solvent, binding the radioactive dust to the fabric and making it impossible to wash off with standard water. You turn yourself into a walking hotspot. Furthermore, the old Chevy has no cabin air filter worth a damn. When you finally get it running and hit the road, the drafty cab is going to suck in the radioactive dust stirred up by the tyres. You have to tape the vents and wear your N95 mask while driving. It is a leaky submarine diving into a sea of poison. You manage to get the truck running, but you cannot leave yet. Night is falling, and the neighbourhood perimeter has to be secured. You walk the fence line of your property with your trusted neighbours. The moon provides the only illumination. The shadows are long and deceptive. You set up a crude early warning system, empty tin cans strung along 50-pound test fishing line tied to the chain link fence. It is primitive, but it is reliable. You hear a dog barking 3 blocks over. A sharp crack of gunfire echoes in the distance. Then silence. The darkness is oppressive. You take the first watch, sitting on the roof of your porch with a pair of binoculars. The cold sets in. You see a flashlight beam sweep across the street at the end of the block. Someone is testing the defences. They are probing the perimeter, looking for a weak point. You chamber around. The sound is metallic and final. The failed reaction of the community at night is the assumption that locking the front door is enough. You see houses down the street where people have just gone to bed, completely unguarded. They rely on the psychological comfort of deadbolts and structural walls. They do not realise that a brick through a sliding glass door takes exactly 2 seconds to compromise their fortress. Or worse, you see guys taking watch who are drinking the last of their beer, thinking it is a camping trip. They fall asleep in their lawn chairs. They lack discipline. When the predators come, they do not come knocking. They come silently over the back fence. The sleepy guard gets his skull caved in with a brick, and the house is overrun before the family even wakes up. Treating security as a passive state instead of an active, relentless posture is how you lose everything you spent the last 5 days bleeding for. Perimeter security logistics dictate defence in depth. You need an outer ring of detection, a middle ring of delay, and an inner ring of defence. You might argue that a determined gang will just burn the house down if they cannot get in. Here is why that objection fails. Opportunistic scavengers are looking for resources, not ashes. If they burn the house, they burn the food, the water, and the gear. Fire is counterproductive to their survival. They want a soft target they can intimidate or quickly overwhelm. Your goal is to make your perimeter too costly to breach. You use the tin cans for detection. You use felled trees and dragged debris to block the driveway, creating a delay. When they hit the obstacles and make noise, you illuminate them with a high-lumen tactical light. You ruin their night vision and announce that you are awake, armed, and ready. 90% of raiders will break contact. The specific complication of night watch on day 5 is the radiological curfew. The air cools at night, causing temperature inversions that can trap suspended radioactive particulates closer to the ground. The dust you kicked up during the day settles heavily. If you are sitting on the roof pulling a 4-hour watch, you are accumulating a steady dose of radiation. You are breathing the night air. You have to weigh the tactical necessity of an exterior guard against the biological cost of exposure. You try to set up an observation post inside, looking through a cracked window, but the glass glares and limits your field of view. You are forced to expose yourself. You wrap a scarf around your face, hoping it filters the worst of the alpha particles, knowing it is a pathetic shield against the invisible fire. You are trading your cellular integrity to buy your family another sunrise. Dawn breaks. You survive the night, but the victory is hollow. You go back down into the basement safe room. Your 6-year-old daughter is sitting on her sleeping bag. She is pale. She looks at you, holding a plastic cup. She asks if the water is fixed yet. She asks when she can go back to school to see her friends. You look at the single, half-empty bottle of purified water left in your stash. You hear the distant sound of someone weeping in the house next door. The air is stale. You realise that keeping her alive physically is only half the battle. Her eyes are hollow. The psychological weight of the basement is crushing her. You pour 2 ounces of water into her cup. It barely wets her mouth. You force a smile. You tell her a story about how you are just on a long camping adventure. You lie to her, brilliantly and completely. The failed reaction of parents in this scenario is breaking down in front of their dependents. You hear it through the walls. Adults weeping uncontrollably, screaming at their spouses about whose fault it is that they did not prep. They vent their terror openly. They think they are being honest, but they are actually just destroying their children's will to live. When a child sees their primary protector shatter, their own psychological foundation collapses. They stop eating, they become lethargic, they succumb to a deep, catatonic apathy. This is how people die of despair before the radiation or the starvation even touches them. The parents who sit in the dark and cry are failing the most basic test of leadership. They are prioritising their own emotional release over the mental armour of their dependents. They are weak, and their weakness is a contagion that will kill their family just as surely as the fallout outside. The logistics of psychological triage are brutal. You have to compartmentalise your terror. Your heart rate is spiking, your stomach is gnawing on itself, and you know the math says you are going to run out of food in 48 hours. You take that data, lock it in a box in your mind, and project absolute, unshakable confidence. You might argue that lying to your family is dangerous, and they need to know the reality to help. No, they do not. A 6-year-old cannot help you hotwire a truck or shoot a looter. Giving them the burden of the truth is cruel and tactically useless. Your job is to absorb the horror so they do not have to. You maintain a rigid routine. Breakfast at 0800, even if breakfast is a single cracker. Story time at 1900. You manufacture normalcy out of thin air. You are the emotional anchor. If you crack, the ship sinks. The specific complication is the guilt of knowing that every promise you make is a check you might not be able to cash. You promise her she will see her friends again. You know with absolute certainty that half her friends are already dead from the blast and the other half are starving in their own basements. You promise her the water will come back. You know the municipal pumps are fried and the reservoirs are contaminated with strontium-90. You carry the weight of these lies every time you look at her trusting face. The guilt eats at you. It is a heavier burden than the tactical vest or the rifle. But it is also the ultimate driver. That guilt pushes you to go back out into the radioactive street. It pushes you to fight the warlord. It pushes you to siphon the gas. You will burn the world down to make your lies the truth. You look at the keys to the 1974 Chevy in your hand. You look at the taped up windows. Day 5 is the pivot point. The weak have panicked, the predators have organised, and the illusion of the cavalry has evaporated. You are the cavalry now. This curriculum is not about teaching you how to hoard supplies in the dark. It is about understanding the transition of authority. When the grid fails, authority does not vanish, it localizes. It distills down to the perimeter of your property, the edge of your rifle, and the depth of your resolve. People thought the infrastructure of the old world was what kept the lights on. They were wrong. The grid is not what keeps the lights on. It is what keeps the monsters out. And now that it is gone, you have to stand in the breach. Stay alert. Stay alive. End of transmission.